Life has a way of carrying us forward before we stop to ask where we are going. We are born into expectations. The moment we take our first steps, a path is already waiting, laid out by parents, culture, and society's invisible rules. We learn how to behave, fit in, and be acceptable. Little by little, we create a version of ourselves that is easier for the world to handle. We smile when expected, speak when safe, and hide the parts of us that don't get approval. For years it works. We navigate school, jobs, and relationships. People nod in approval. On paper, life looks fine. But deep inside, a quiet unease lingers. Carl Jung recognized this unease as the quiet voice of the self. Not the self we introduce to others, not the carefully maintained image, but the totality of who we are when the masks fall. He believed that until we truly meet this self, we are not living, we are performing. And performances, however convincing, cannot feed the soul. Finding yourself, in Jung's sense, is not an inspirational slogan, a weekend retreat, or a sudden rush of motivation. It is a slow, often painful journey. It begins when we realize the life we are living does not feel like our own. Maybe we notice it upon waking each morning, feeling nothing about the day ahead. Maybe we notice it when achievements bring less joy than they should. Maybe it appears as a dull, inexplicable sadness. Whatever the form, that discomfort is the first signal that the mask is cracking. Here is the dangerous part. The world will tell us to ignore it. It will tell us to keep going, to be grateful, to stay the course. It will promise that the unease will fade. But Jung knew the opposite is true. Ignore it, and it grows. Suppress it, and it waits. One day, it will break through uncontrollably, in burnout, depression, or a collapse of the life we thought was secure. To truly find ourselves, we must turn toward this discomfort. We must let go of the idea that our value comes from meeting others' expectations. We must honestly examine the parts of ourselves we have hidden, even from ourselves. Jung called this confrontation individuation, the process of becoming whole, of integrating all the lost and denied parts of our being. It is not neat or tidy. It will challenge the stories we have lived by and may make those around us uncomfortable. But this is the price of living our own life instead of the one we inherited. Most people never take this path. They choose comfort over authenticity, stability over truth. They tell themselves it's not the right time, they have too many responsibilities, or change is too risky. But those who do take the journey discover something the rest will never know, the sense of being fully alive. Every action, choice, and breath begins to feel different. We no longer move through life as shadows of ourselves. We become solid, present, unshakable. Jung believed this moment, when we are no longer defined by our roles, but by the truth we live, is the real beginning of life. Before it we exist. After it we live. There is a reason most people never truly find themselves. The road leads straight into the place they fear most, their own shadow. For Jung, the shadow was everything we hide from others and ourselves. It is the anger we deny, the envy we pretend isn't there, and the weakness we mask with strength. It is the truth that we are not only good, kind, and rational, but also selfish, jealous, impulsive, and fragile. Society teaches us to bury these parts, to cover them with politeness and ambition. For a while it works. But buried things don't disappear, they wait. We see it in sudden bursts of emotion that don't make sense, in overreacting to small slights, and in disturbing dreams we can't quite explain. We see it in the patterns we repeat even when they hurt us. These are not random. They are messages from the shadow, the parts of ourselves we have locked away, demanding to be acknowledged. The tragedy is that most people think the shadow is an enemy to be destroyed. Jung argued the opposite. The shadow is not there to ruin us, but to complete us. Until we face it, we are only half a person, a performance, carefully edited to look good in the light, but always haunted by what lurks in the dark. To meet your shadow is to stop pretending. It is to admit you are capable of cruelty, that you can be petty, and that you have undesirable desires. It is to acknowledge that the qualities you despise in others often live inside you as well. This is not easy. It will dismantle your illusions and shatter the image you've worked so hard to maintain. But in the rubble, you will find something far more valuable: the truth. Once you begin this work, the world will look different. You will notice the masks people wear, the fear behind their anger, and the insecurity behind their arrogance. You will stop taking things at face value and slowly stop needing to defend your own mask, because you will know that what is dark in you does not make you unworthy, but whole. Jung warned that this process has a cost. People may not understand you. Some will leave, unable to reconcile the person they thought you were with the person you are becoming. You may find yourself alone for stretches of the journey. But solitude, in this context, is not emptiness, but space to see yourself without distortion, to listen without the noise of other people's expectations. The shadow is also where your hidden strength lives, the assertiveness you were taught to suppress, the creativity you dismissed as impractical, and the passion you buried under responsibility. When you reclaim these, life expands. Decisions feel less forced. Relationships feel less like negotiations and more like genuine connections. You stop chasing approval because you already have your own. This is why Jung said life begins when you find yourself, because to truly find yourself, you must integrate what you have rejected. You must bring light to what you have kept in the dark. Only then do you stop being divided against yourself. Only then does your energy stop leaking into maintaining masks and start flowing into living. Here is the paradox. The parts of yourself you feared most often become the source of your freedom. The anger you thought was dangerous becomes the boundary that protects you. The selfishness you condemn becomes the self-respect that saves you from exploitation. The vulnerability you hid becomes the bridge that allows others to truly know you. The shadow is not the end of the journey, but the gate you must pass through. On the other side is a life not dictated by fear, approval, or the need to fit in. It is a life that feels solid, where your choices are not reactions but expressions of who you are. Most people will never open that gate. But for those who do, there is no going back. Once you have seen yourself fully, light and shadow together, you cannot return to pretending. You cannot shrink to fit the life you lived before. You carry yourself differently. You speak differently. You are not easily manipulated. You no longer confuse comfort with happiness. And in that moment, when you stand as a whole person for the first time, you understand what Jung meant. Everything before this was a rehearsal. Now, finally, once the shadow is faced and integrated, the journey doesn't end, it changes shape. The chaos once feared becomes raw material, and the task is to shape it into something reflecting your true being. Jung called this process individuation, the slow, patient work of becoming an undivided person. Individuation is not perfection. It does not mean becoming flawless or immune to pain. It means becoming real. It means your inner life and outer life begin to match. You are no longer acting out a script, you are writing it as you go. And yet, this is not a path you control in the way you might control a career or a project. You cannot force individuation. You can only cooperate with it. You can only listen to what life brings and respond with honesty instead of habit. In the early stages, individuation can feel like dismantling a building while still living in it. Old beliefs collapse. Friendships change shape or disappear. Careers shift direction. Sometimes, it feels as if everything you used to stand on is gone. This is why so many people turn back. They prefer the familiar discomfort of the mask to the unpredictable terrain of authenticity. But those who continue find that, piece by piece, the rubble becomes the foundation of something far stronger. Jung believed that dreams often act as guides in this stage. They show the parts of ourselves still waiting to be acknowledged. A dream of a locked room might signal an unexplored talent or memory. A dream of being chased might point to fears still hidden. Paying attention to these messages is not superstition, it is a way of letting the unconscious speak. Individuation is not only the work of the conscious mind, it is a dialogue between what you know about yourself and what you have yet to know. As you move deeper into this process, a strange thing happens. You begin to accept contradictions within yourself. You can be strong and gentle, logical and intuitive, ambitious and content. Before, you might have tried to choose one side and reject the other, but individuation teaches that wholeness is not about choosing, It is about holding your light and shadow together without letting them tear you apart. This acceptance makes you harder to manipulate because you no longer fear your own complexity. Individuation also changes how you see others. You stop demanding they play the roles you want. You start seeing the masks they wear not as deceit but as protection. You realize everyone is carrying a private war within them, and judgment gives way to understanding. This doesn't mean tolerating harm, but it does mean recognizing that most cruelty is born from unacknowledged pain. This stage can last years, even decades. Jung himself saw individuation as a lifelong process. It is not a goal you tick off, it is the way you live. Each challenge, each loss, each unexpected turn becomes an invitation to become more whole. The work never truly ends, but it changes you so deeply that you stop fearing its endlessness. You see that growth is not a chore, it is the very rhythm of being alive. There is a deep peace that begins to take root. Not the fragile peace that depends on everything going well, but the grounded peace that comes from knowing you can face whatever comes. You have met your shadow. You have walked through loss. You have watched parts of your identity die and found that you did not die with them. That knowledge is unshakable. It cannot be taken from you because it is not based on circumstance. It is based on the truth of who you are. And this is the quiet irony of Jung's insight. The journey to find yourself often begins in pain, in the shattering of illusions, in the dismantling of what you thought life was. But as you keep walking, you discover that what you feared losing was never truly you. And what you gain, a self that is whole, unafraid of its own depths, is worth more than every false comfort you left behind. At this point, life feels different in ways that are hard to explain to those who haven't walked the path. You don't need to fill every silence. You don't need to win every argument. You are no longer at war with yourself, and so you are no longer at war with the world. You can sit with uncertainty without rushing to resolve it. You can face conflict without being consumed by it. You can be with people without losing yourself in them. This is the point at which many people realize that finding yourself was never about arriving at a fixed identity. It was about learning to live in truth, moment by moment, no matter how that truth changes. You become like a tree, deeply rooted yet able to bend with the wind. And in this rootedness, in this deep alignment between who you are inside and how you live outside, you finally understand what it means to be alive. When Jung said life begins when you find yourself, he wasn't talking about a single event. He was talking about this, the slow, unending unfolding of your true nature. A life in which you do not need to escape yourself because you have become your own home. When you begin to live as yourself, truly yourself, everything you once knew looks different. It is as if the lenses you wore all your life have been taken off, and you suddenly see the world without distortion. The change is subtle at first, but it touches everything: how you love, work, dream, and face the end of things. In relationships, the difference is profound. Before, you may have loved with an undercurrent of fear of rejection, abandonment, and not being enough. You might have molded yourself into what you thought the other person wanted, biting your tongue when you disagreed and pretending to be less complicated. Now that fear dissolves. You no longer seek love to prove your worth. You share love as an extension of your wholeness. This doesn't mean you become indifferent. In fact, the opposite occurs. Your love deepens, but it's no longer desperate. You give without the hidden demand that the other person complete you because you have already completed yourself. This changes the kind of love you accept. You stop clinging to relationships that drain you. You no longer mistake intensity for intimacy or drama for passion. You can walk away from unhealthy relationships without turning it into a war because you understand that letting go is not failure, but a form of loyalty to your soul. The people who remain in your life see you as you are, not as they wish you to be. These connections are quieter and steadier, but they run deep. Work transforms as well. You may still have the same job, title, and daily routine, but your relationship to it shifts. Before, work may have been a way to gain approval or fill the emptiness. Now, it becomes an expression of who you are, or at least a means of supporting your chosen life. You begin to notice when your work aligns with your values and when it doesn't. The hunger for meaningless achievement fades, replaced by the desire to create something real, something that leaves a trace beyond numbers and accolades. Sometimes this leads to bold changes, a career shift, a return to a once abandoned passion, a refusal to compromise your integrity for a paycheck. Other times, it is quieter, a change in how you approach the same work, infusing it with presence rather than rushing through it. Either way, you stop seeing work as a measure of your identity. It is no longer the stage where you prove yourself, but one of many arenas where your true self can act. Even your relationship with time changes. When lost in the mask, you might have been in constant hurry, as if life was something to be won. Now you begin to live in longer breaths. You can sit with a moment without trying to turn it into something else. The urge to constantly compare yourself to others fades, replaced by the quiet realization that there is no race. Inevitably, there is the question of mortality. The old self might have feared death as the ultimate loss. But once you have found yourself, death takes on a different meaning. It is no longer the enemy. It is the reminder that life was always temporary, and what matters is not how long you live, but how fully you live. This awareness strips away the trivial. Arguments you once obsessed over dissolve. Petty grudges lose their grip. You begin to measure your days not by how much you get done, but by how much of yourself you bring into them. This doesn't make you fearless in the face of death, but it does make you fearless in the face of life. You stop holding back. You stop waiting for the right time to speak, act, or love. You see clearly that the right time is now because now is all you ever truly have. People may notice the change in you, though they may not be able to name it. They might say you seem calmer, stronger, or more present. Some will be drawn to it. Others will be unsettled because your presence reminds them of the masks they are still wearing. You will have to accept that you cannot make them take their masks off. The work of finding oneself cannot be done for another person. You can only live as an example, a quiet reminder that there is another way to be. Even in this new life, there will still be challenges. Old wounds will resurface. Loss will come. Fear will knock again. But the difference is that you meet these things as yourself, not as a role you're playing. You face them with the same honesty you used to avoid, and in doing so, they lose their power to shatter you. You understand that the storms will come and go, but your roots run deep enough to hold you steady. Finding yourself is not a single event. It is the creation of a foundation that no one else can give you or take away. It is living in such a way that, no matter what changes on the surface, your core remains intact. It is waking up each day not asking, "What do they want from me?" but "What is true for me today?" This is the freedom Jung was pointing to, the freedom to live without pretending, to act without betraying yourself, to die without feeling that you never truly lived. Once you taste it, there is no going back because you finally understand that everything you thought was life before was just a shadow. This is life. There comes a moment, often without ceremony, when you realize the search is over. Not because life has given you every answer, but because you no longer need to chase them. You have found the one thing you were looking for all along, yourself. It doesn't feel like fireworks. It feels like standing in the center of a still, vast landscape and breathing for the first time without the weight on your chest. You look back on the years you spent running toward approval, running from pain, running in circles around the same patterns, and you see it all clearly. The struggles, the mistakes, the betrayals, the restless longing, they were not detours. They were the path. They were the very forces that broke the shell you mistook for your life and pushed you into the open. You understand now why Jung never spoke of this journey as easy or glamorous. It is not about polishing the surface. It is about tearing down the false walls inside you until nothing stands between you and the truth. It is about walking into rooms in your soul you swore you'd never enter, sitting with the ghosts you tried to bury, and learning their names. And in doing so, you realize they were never there to destroy you. They were there to lead you home. Living as yourself does not mean life stops hurting. It means the hurt no longer defines you. Pain becomes something you move through, not something you drown in. You stop asking, "Why me?" and start asking, "What is this showing me?" Joy changes too. It becomes quieter, deeper. It is no longer tied to big wins or fleeting highs, but to moments so simple they might have passed unnoticed before, sunlight spilling into your room in the morning, the sound of someone you love laughing, the feeling of being exactly where you are meant to be, even if nothing is perfect. You notice that you carry yourself differently now. You don't rush to fill silence because silence is no longer uncomfortable. You don't rush to defend yourself from misunderstanding because your worth is no longer up for debate. You don't try to convince others to see what you see because you understand that everyone must walk their own road at their own pace. The old urgency to prove yourself, to win, to be right, has dissolved into something steadier, a quiet certainty that you are enough, exactly as you are. And perhaps the most profound change is this: you are no longer afraid of endings. You know that everything in life is temporary, the seasons, the roles you play, even this body you inhabit. But instead of clinging in fear, you learn to hold things gently, to love fully while you have them, and to let go when it is time. You begin to see endings not as failures, but as thresholds. You crossed many to arrive here, and you will cross many more. And each time, you will carry yourself across because you are your own home now. This is why Jung said life begins when you find yourself. Before, you were moving, but not living. You were breathing, but not awake. You were a shadow of your own potential. Now you are here, whole, awake, present. And in this wholeness, life becomes simpler and richer at once. You stop searching for meaning as if it were hidden somewhere else because you see that meaning is something you create every day by the way you live, love, and face the world. You will still have days when you forget, days when the mask tries to return, days when old fears knock on the door. But now you know the way back. You know that you can walk through the dark and not lose yourself. You know that no matter what happens, success or failure, gain or loss, you will not abandon who you are. That knowledge is your anchor. It is your freedom. And so, the journey ends where it truly begins, not with the discovery of some new, perfect self, but with the embrace of the self that was there all along, waiting for you to come home. Everything before was a rehearsal. This is your life. And it is yours at last.